Welcome to the Stephen Mansfield audio podcast.
I want to talk to you in this podcast about one of the most important leadership principles I know. Many of you listen to this podcast because you want me to reflect on the world and the direction it's going, and you want to see it through a certain lens, and I appreciate that. Some of you also listen because I regularly talk about men, and I'm going to be talking to you in the future about the possibility of a second podcast that I'll be doing that'll be exclusively devoted to men. So I'm glad for all the reasons that all of you listen to this podcast. But many of you, if not all of you, are leaders in some way, and you want me to reflect from time to time on leadership principles and leadership truths. So I want to give you one in this podcast that I think is absolutely critical. It really comes to mind because I'm sitting right now in my office in Washington, D.C. I'm reflecting on the news of late. I'm reflecting on Donald Trump's trip to Europe and the Middle East. I'm reflecting on some of the messes that are happening in Washington, D.C. and in our country. And I want to say that there's a clear difference. There's a clear line of demarcation between two kinds of leaders. And that line of demarcation, those two kinds of leaders, are defined by those who do the practice I'm about to describe and those who do not. Most leaders have no one in their life who can speak truthfully and honestly to them about who they are, about how they come across, about what they need to improve, and about how they could be greater in what they're called to do. Now, I call the person that we would allow to speak to us, I call the people in my life who are able to, whom I allow to speak bluntly and straightforwardly to me, I speak of these as my 3D. If I'm just going to make up a name here. If Joe is a guy who's close to me and we walk together and he's one I trust to speak to me, I'll say Joe's my 3D. It's just shorthand we use in my little world, in my little culture, the 3D. Most of us have no one we trust and no one we've given permission to step into our lives, to already be in our lives, of course, and to speak to us about what we can improve. Now, what I'm about to talk about here for a moment is not politically motivated, but I'm intrigued by Donald Trump. Whatever his virtues politically, whatever his virtues because of causes he champions or the things he does right, we know that a great deal of storm and controversy and distraction occurs almost every day because of some aspect of his character or his manner with people. When he was meeting with NATO, he was literally pushing heads of state around and so he could be prominent at the front of a picture. He was brash. He was harsh. He was insulting. He could have made a great deal more progress. In fact, on this trip, as I've already attested to in a previous podcast, he did some brilliant things. But those things were overshadowed by the things he did not do well. In fact, by the things that he did that were bombastic and destructive and insulting and ultimately damaging to the American cause in the world. Why does he do those things? He does those things because largely since he was a young man, he's had no one in his life who could speak bluntly to him and whose counsel he would accept. He's had no 3D. He's had no one who sees him from a three-dimensional perspective. He's had PR photos. Those are one-dimensional or two-dimensional. He's had assistants. He's had parents. He's had brothers and sisters, but he's not allowed any of them since about the age of 13 to speak to him in any meaningful way about what he needed to change, about how he could improve, about how he could soften here and strengthen there, about how he could be more effective in the world. So during the entire Trump presidency, we will be talking about his manner, his personality, his character, his deformities, because he's not well-rounded. He might end up being a great president for all I know. Who knows? Maybe he'll turn from where he is now, where we deal with a new controversy every day. But the fact is that the reason we're dealing with all this is that he's not well-rounded, and he's not well-rounded because he's not had people around him who could be his 3Ds, who could see him from a three-dimensional perspective he could not see himself, and thus help him to improve. I'll use Donald Trump as an example of a second principle I want to bring out. This idea of your 3D, this idea that you need to have people in your life who can speak truthfully to you, who can see you as you really are. Of course it takes courage. Of course it takes some humility. Of course you have to trust that others see what you do not. Of course you have to be willing to change and eager to change and not just defensive of the territory you've already staked out for yourself. But I'll tell you the thing that I've seen here in Washington that keeps people from really receiving from those who could be their 3D effect, who really could help them and help them make a massive difference in their lives. And that is that they discount those around them. I've watched this for years. I've tried to help leaders avoid it in the leadership consulting that I do. I've watched it happen here in D.C. I've watched it happen in ministry. I've watched it happen in the military. What happens is that there are people around us. In fact, I believe that if we're praying people and trusting God, that God positions those kinds of people around us. And yet, what often happens is that rather than trust those who are around us, who could be our 3Ds, rather than trust those who could see us from a perspective we cannot see ourselves in and thus help us, instead, we discount them. In a sense, we become offended with them over something. We don't listen to Joan, and I'm making up all these names. We don't listen to Joan because her grammar's bad. We don't listen to Joe because of that thing he did last year. We don't listen to Bill because, after all, he's had 2 divorces, so what could he know? We don't listen to Sally, because Sally herself is overweight. So what could she say to me about my leadership or my character or the way I communicate or my grammar or my manner with women, or my manner with men, or whatever needs to improve in my life? And I have watched people in leadership. I have watched people I know, some I've even worked with over the years, and what they do is they discount those who are around them for some reason. Well, let me just tell you that everyone in your life could be discounted for some reason. We're all flawed. We all make mistakes. We all have dark, blots on our record from the past. I'm 58 years old. Of course, I've got some things in my life that I would be happy to talk about, but it doesn't change the fact that they are, not the best moments of my life. I've been rude. I've failed. I've sinned. My point is not to make light of it. My point is to say, well, if you're looking for some reason not to listen to Stephen Mansfield, I suppose you could find it if you're going to let something in one area of my life keep you from listening to me and the counsel that I have for you in another area of my life and perspective. So this is always possible. You can discount your spouse, you can discount your friends, you can discount your parents, you can discount experts in the field, you can discount everyone. I had a friend die not too long ago because he discounted his doctor's advice. Why did he discount that advice? Because he knew something was wrong in the doctor's life. The doctor was having an affair. It was kind of well known in the community. So my friend continued to go to this doctor, but discounted the man's advice. How foolish. How foolish. Get yourself another doctor. Help that doctor clean up his life. Do something. But don't sit there and hear counsel and then refuse to observe it because the man's got a moral flaw in an area, by the way, that has nothing to do with his medical care for you. It's just silly, but this is what we often do. And I'm sitting in D.C. and I'm watching not only Donald Trump, but a lot of people who could be really stellar leaders. Some of the people who are vilified in the press and some of the people who are seem to be declining to some degree with some help, with some 3D, with some perspective that they don't have on their own. They could really do marvelous things. This city, this town I'm sitting in, is filled with amazingly gifted and talented people. Usually it's character that determines the game. It's character that determines victory. These are smart people. This is one of the best educated cities in the world, according to a recent survey. It's stunning what can be accomplished by the people here. And yet low character, ignorance of themselves, discounting the relationships around them, not allowing that 3D perspective, not being humble enough and eager enough for success in a pure way to allow others to speak meaningfully into your life. It is what is causing tremendous destruction in this city. And I would say that Donald Trump is an exemplar of that, and I'm not making a political statement here. I'm just talking about his character. Even if you're 100% aligned with him politically and like what he's doing, we all have to admit that this is a man who has not allowed others to speak in a 3D fashion in his life. This is a man who has not been humble enough to let the counsel around him shape him, round him out, knock off the rough edges, guide him, help him be more effective. So he will fight the repercussions of his own personality and character every day, as we will as a nation, rather than allowing himself to improve through the counsel of others and thus serve better in his role. I want to put this right between your eyes because, again, I'm speaking to leaders here. Who are your 3Ds? And do you have 3Ds around you whom you've discounted? It's a very important question. I don't care if you consider yourself not even to be a leader. I want you to think about who in your life do you trust? To whom do you grant access? To whom do you grant an open door? Who has the right to speak to you at any time? Now, for those of you men who have been following what I do and reading my books and listening to some of the podcasts that I do about building your band of brothers, then you know that this principle is already built into the idea of having a band of brothers. But I'm speaking to everyone now who's a leader, male, female, of every kind. You cannot see yourself clearly enough to improve in the ways that you need. You may not see that you're gaining weight. You may not see that you're becoming bitter and angry in a certain area. You may not know that your effect when you speak is not what you want it to be. You may not know that the way you conduct a meeting is counterproductive and is keeping your staff from serving you well, etc., etc., etc. Who are your 3Ds? Have you discounted them? And how can you make a change? This is vital. And what I've just said is not only about you individually, although I hope you'll take it very personally and make a change, but it's also about what's going on in D.C. If any good thing is meant to come out of the Trump administration, politics aside, I hope it is in part that we work hard to not reproduce in our own lives the type of distraction and the type of destruction, I would say, and certainly the type of lost destiny that being a man like Donald Trump can produce. I'm not trying to be insulting. I'm saying Donald Trump is a brilliant, gifted man, but his manner, his personality, things that others might have fixed, is going to limit what he could have accomplished in his administration. Even if he has 8 years and a great many good things happen, a great many more good things could have happened. And it's all due to the fact that he has not allowed a 3D process in his life. And if there's anyone who discounts those around him, it's Donald Trump. Don't be like that. Be effective. Be successful. Draw 3D people towards you. Give them access. Be the best you can be.
Stephen Mansfield is a New York Times best-selling author, a popular speaker, and a frequent faith and culture commentator on Fox and CNN. His groundbreaking books on faith and society include The Faith of George W. Bush, The Search for God in Guinness, Mansfield's Book of Manly Men, and The Miracle of the Kurds. His new book is Ask the Question: Why We Must Demand Religious Clarity from Our Presidential Candidates, available on Amazon. Learn more about Stephen at stephenmansfield.tv. The Stephen Mansfield podcast is directed by Isaac Darnold, who also wrote, produced, and performed the podcast theme song. This is a Chartwell Literary Group production.